5.
If the devil really exists, then the deep web would be his ultimate creation, where the most evil people unite to share their ultimate sins. My name is Andy, and I worked for the government for over 20 years. In that time, I've seen some truly messed up stuff. I've been around searching for missing people before even Google were invented, before you probably were even in your dad's nutsack. So listen carefully when I tell you the deep web would completely destroy your psyche. It would eat away at your soul until you're a shell of your former self. You'll curl up in bed at night, crying in your sleep, wishing you never turned on your damn computer. I've seen people with their tongues cut off and their eyes gouged out, where their next of kin had to identify their poor loved one, where people were kidnapped, brutally tortured, and then left on the side of the road like they're a piece of trash. It's a job that I've seen the toughest of men break down in total disgust, as their life becomes a total reminder in how truly wicked man has become. For me though, it's become a total reminder that I'm on the hunt for these barbaric, inhumane creatures that lurk around hunting for their next prey. Now that I've described a bit about myself, I hope you can understand when I try and warn you to never go on the deep web. Even I was not prepared for what I saw. Young adults being sold into slavery, where their wailing cries could not save them from their doom, where their skin and mouth were so dry from the lack of water. There they were in a small confined area, chained up to the ground like wild animals. The only light they saw was when the show began. The show. That's what they called it. I've never seen anything as disturbing such as when the show began. These young adults, who you could tell were not being fed, were so dirty. They would be made to dance in the complete nude for the entertainment of a sadistic mind. One adult who only just turned 18 was so scared she couldn't dance, as she was frozen by fear. The lights came on bright. It shined so bright towards her face that she had to put her hands to cover up her eyes. Her long brown hair looked so greasy. Her bones penetrated out of her skin. Tears coming down from her blue eyes. A deep robotic voice suddenly came on that would even give me chills. "Dance," he said. She was absolutely terrified as she began dancing. Not too long later, she just burst into tears and knelt on the floor, begging for help. "Please stop," she said. "Please stop." Music came on. Music that would make Freddy Krueger wet the bed. The music resembled like creepy doll kind of music. The lights shut off. Everything was now in pure darkness. What the hell was going on? I felt so ashamed and useless that I'm watching these poor people get tortured. It was beyond cruelty. All you could hear was the screams of fear in the darkness and the rattling of chains. Laughter could then be heard. A demonic, robotic kind of laughter. It certainly did not sound human. The people doing this could not be human. They were demons trapped in the human body. The lights came back on. There she was, chained up to the ceiling, tears coming down her poor face. She could no longer put her hands in the way of her eyes to block out the bright lights that were now blinding her. She was helpless. It was like she knew her fate, and her fate was going to end brutally at the hands of these monsters. The camera panned around, and there they were. I'm guessing they were 4 men. They all had masks on. The cowards couldn't even show their faces. They began skipping around. It was so bizarre. And then every so often, they would stop and then burn the poor girl with a candle. Her screams of total agony were being blocked out by the laughter of these monsters. It was quite apparent that these men loved what they were doing. They loved to torture these poor people, knowing no one could help them. 4 hours later, she was left hanging. Her eyes were gouged out and her stomach was ripped open. Let the next show begin. I left my job a few months later. I was sick and tired of watching these brutal so-called shows, and my boss telling me there was nothing we could do because we couldn't trace down the location. The job eventually changed me. I became more recluse. I began hating the world. I'm trying to get my life back to normality and now work as a security for a firm. And even though the pay is not as good, it's nice not to see young adults and even children either getting cut up or sold into slavery. That is not a fucking job for me. So my warning to you is don't go on a deep web. It broke me mentally, so imagine what it would do to you little punks.
4.
I was staying at a hotel with friends in Northern Ontario for a chess tournament. Geeky, I know. Can't exactly remember the town. Anyway, we were looking for some thrills at night, and someone busted out a board. The bloody Ouija board. One of those official ones you can get from Toys R Us. We asked a few questions I can't remember, but I will never forget when we asked if it knew if any of us was going to die. Yeah, I know, strange question to ask. So, it spelled out a person's name that was actually with us at the time, and then a date, which was approximately a year later. Shockingly, my friend died a year later from cancer in his knee. He knew it about 6 months before he died. To this day, I am still curious about the device, but damned if I ever touch it again.
3.
My friend had mentioned that she had an Ouija board, so I asked her to pull the board out so I could check it out. At first, she said no, but then agreed to do it as long as she didn't have to participate. After she had the board set up, I asked, "Is there anyone here?" Nothing. So being a dumb teenager, I said, "If anyone is in here and not talking, you're a coward." The board was put away after that. Fast forward about a week later, and I'm sleeping upstairs on my couch. I wake up on a stereotypical stormy night. Thunder and lightning, wind and rain, the works. I look around to see why I woke up, and I couldn't see a thing. I decided to try and fall back asleep. After laying there for about 30 seconds, I hear from downstairs,
"Get the boy,"
in a very raspy, wispy voice. I open my eyes and listen. Nothing. I start to go back to sleep.
"Get the boy."
It was much louder this time. Then my downstairs door slammed shut. I freaked the fuck out because nobody slept down there, and we had no drafts. It absolutely scared the absolute shit out of me. I will never touch an Ouija board again.
2.
About 15 years ago, my sister had some friends over one night. They were in the basement watching some scary movie. They had an Ouija board. They started cussing at it and calling it shit and fucking fake. It stopped responding, so they began watching the movie again. All of a sudden, all the lights and electricity goes out. They start screaming, then the TV comes on, all static, and is blaring noise. They were yelling and crying, then the TV shuts off and comes back on to just a blank screen. The words, "This is not a game anymore," rolled across the screen in all white. After that, the TV shuts off and they are in complete darkness. They run out of the house. After a little while, they go back into the house, and our dog was hiding when they found it. All it did was bark and look very angry at them. It scared the absolute life out of all of them.
1.
I have a terrifying story about an Ouija board. I got a call from my cousin who said that he, his brother, his dad and his best friend were using an Ouija board in their basement. Prior to starting, they took a large porcelain doll out of the room because it was creepy and placed it in the other room facing down on a pile of towels. My cousin took a short break because the board was just spouting nonsense and he went to take a shit. His dad and brother and friend started asking the board questions without him. One of the questions was who is in the other room. It just started spouting random numbers, and when my cousin came back into the room, his brother said that it wasn't working and that they were going to put it away, and he showed him the answer to the last question he asked, and he said,
Dude, that's my social security number.
Then they started to talk to whatever started spewing out answers. Told my cousin he would die in the Air Force. At this point, they tell the entity they are communicating with to prove itself. It then spelled out the word doll, and they were like,
What the fuck?
They opened the door to check on the porcelain doll they had laid in the other room. And when they opened the door, the doll was standing upright in front of the door, staring right at them. Everyone freaked out and ran out of the house. His best friend burned the Ouija board, and I think he temporarily went nuts for a few months. My cousin, for some reason, then joined the Air Force and is on a base in Europe now.